My name is Richard Wilson, the other Richard, because there was another Richard, Murray's right-hand man back there, Richard Young. So I was the other Richard. I met Murray in 1986. I had decided I wanted to be a bartender, and I was waiting tables in a restaurant, and the bar manager there said he would train me to become a bartender. And so we started traipsing around town, looking at other bars and other bartenders, trying to learn for me. And we went to Daniel's Broiler. We went in there, and my friend had a lady friend along with him, and she looked over and she goes, "I know that bartender. That guy is a great bartender." I'm like, "Well, what makes him a great bartender?" She says, "Oh, he's just really fast with his cocktails, gets your drinks up, never gets flustered, never gets mad or mad at you," which bartenders, as we know, are likely to do. So I knew right away that I wanted to work at Daniel's, and I wanted to work with Murray and Richard. And everyone always talks about how Murray mentors people. And I just watched him as closely as I could. He taught me a language of how to interact with people. And I can draw a line back to working with him at Daniel's to every single job I got after that. So there was always this thread of Murray in my life. He was just a seminal figure for me.
My name is Joe Ward. I'm dear friends with Murray for a very long time, and we worked together off and on for several years. And I'm honored to be here and have this opportunity to share some stories about Murray. I think it was late '79. It might have been early '80. He was a tenant bar at Oliver's, and I went down there to meet up with a cocktail waitress that worked there. and Murray was tenant bar. I was the only one at the bar at the time. It was earlier in the night, and I just knew something was special about that guy that very first night. We got talking about restaurant war stories, and we knew a lot of the same people. And a mutual friend of ours, Jim Luby's name came up, and Murray said, "Oh yeah, I know Jim," and he just opened a place down in Leshai called Daniel's Broiler. Things started roaring pretty quick, and the word got out, and Murray got hired right away, and so it was Murray and Jim. And next thing I know, I got a call from Jim and offered to go down to work there. And I was a kid, I was 24 years old, I think, and I had only been there a short while. And Jim Luby, I think he tore his back out or something water skiing. Anyway, he got injured, and he was off for a few months. So all of a sudden, it was just the Murray and Joe show. And I'll tell you, talk about a crash course in bartending. Murray was without a doubt the fastest bartender I've ever seen, and I've been at a vantage point for many. And I remember I said he's like a blur. He's moving so quick, and you can't even focus on the guy. And I go, "Murray, like a blur." Yeah, that's what we're going to call him. We're going to call him Murray the Blur. And boy, did that name stick. Schwartz Brothers had bought the property, which became Benjamin's on Lake Union. That's an absolute no-brainer who I'm going to go after to be my bartenders, and that was Murray and Richard. And three of us are behind this bar, and we had two wells, and you couldn't fit a piece of paper between the bodies. It was just so packed. And back then, I think well drinks were $2.25, and the first year we did $4.9 million. And if you do the math, that's a lot of cocktails. And at the end of the night, we would be shell-shocked and crazy busy, and then we'd do the books and count the tips, and we kind of look at each other and, hey, it's okay. We can do it again tomorrow. And we did. And that was an amazing time. It was, at the time, there was a restaurant on the west side of Lake Union called Triples in the AGC building. And Southern California chain had opened up on the east side of Lake Union called Rusty Pelican. And when we opened Benjamin's on South Lake Union, we completed what they called the herpes triangle. And it was unbelievable what was going on down there.
I had been working on South Lake Union at a place, if anybody remembers it, Cucina Cucina. Hard to forget. I was a busboy. It was my first job in Seattle, and it was not what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be tending bar eventually somehow. And fellow that I worked with helped me land an interview as a barback at this new place, this new hotspot that was going to be opening, taking over the former Wild Ginger space. I was told from the outset that if I got the job, I would be working with the famous Murr the Blur, which at 21 years old and somebody who was a student at UW at the time, that meant absolutely nothing to me. I had no idea who he was, but everybody else was absolutely in awe of the guy. So it kind of set the tone. The second place was Zigzag. Zigzag was in its ascendancy. I mean, that was when Zigzag won everything, and then Murray then was named Bartender of the Year at Tales, which we all know. And the place, the place went from like a 9.5 to a 12 as far as busyness goes. But that's the charm of the whole thing, right? Like that's where you want to get to. The guy could write a philosophical treatise on tending bar. And with him, it was always tending bar. Bartend was not a verb to him. You tended bar, you didn't bartend. And he never corrected anybody, but it was just how he spoke about it that I remember so specifically. Murray was not a bar chef. Yeah, he never, I don't think Murray ever claimed to be anything but a humble bartender. Yeah, even though we all knew better.
Universally, what the word was, if you wanted to learn how to bartend in this town, you go and you sit at Murray's bar, right? So this is probably 93, and I was working at Tulio. He was working at Old Bistro. I'd get done with my busing shift at 10:30, whatever, and head on down to the bar. Like, teach me how to bartend means, how do you make a old-fashioned, how do you make a martini, how do you make a margarita? But it wasn't just that with Murray. I don't know how many towns have a Murray, but I tend to think it's none besides ours. Like we're lucky. We were gifted this person who had this unique gift for running a bar. It was just different than any other bartender. You see, have the bartenders behind the bar. Hey, how you doing? Do they do their thing? They make their drinks and they do their style and they're all good at it and whatever. But Murray was different. Like like I equate it to watching Michael Jordan or Messi or something like that, where you hear about this guy, you turn on the TV and you start watching, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, and you lean in, and every time they have the ball, you're not going to look away. The mechanics of how he moved, everything is so succinct, so perfect. He's greeting someone here with a little nod, and then giving a wave over here. The Dunhill comes out because somebody pulled out a cigarette. So he's doing all these things. He's looking up and down the bar, and he's conducting. There's a scene here where everybody is there, and they don't know that if things start going wrong, it all breaks. The party's over. It was literally like a conductor. He's boom, then he's going to you for an order, and then he's real quick. Bolognese to seat 2, like literally eyes on the door too, so he's nodding at people walking in, and then if there's an empty bar seat, he knows that guy's going to the bar seat, and somehow magically the drink that guy's going to drink is waiting for them there.
He never wasted a move. That's probably what I learned from him more than anything, was no wasted movement. Every move he made while he was working had a reason, had a purpose. And I got to study that and adopt that.
Murray was not an academic, but he could have been. I didn't have an appreciation for antique or vintage bar manuals prior to working with him, and then I started reading all these things, and he was great because he'd be like, oh, you don't have a copy of this? No, I don't have a copy of, Gentleman's Companion. So he brings me a leather-bound copy of the Gentleman's Companion. It's not just like a copy. It's the nicest, rarest copy that exists. And he probably has 5 of them because he's so far ahead of the curve. And I still have that book, and it's like, it's locked, it's locked up in my house. Nobody knows where it is except me.
His mechanics were unbelievable, right? So you're seeing that, but the other thing that you were really watching with him is how you play bar, and how you play bar is every shift he's slammed. So he doesn't have time to walk over to somebody and throw down a napkin and be like, hey, how you doing today? What do you like to drink? He told you what to drink. He'd come over and say, how are you doing? You like whiskey? and you'd say, yeah, I do like whiskeys. I got something special for you. And he'd just put down 5 glasses and boom, 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 and say, you got all these. The guy next to me, he might get them in on it. You in on this too? And boom, boom, boom. And then those 2 seats are taken care of. He doesn't have to talk to us for a while. And then he can move on and hit the rest of his bar. And he's doing that up and down the bar, just like telling people what to do. The other thing he's doing is connecting everyone at the bar. This is before cell phones. This is early 90s. No one's got cell phones. Like these days, people come in, they sit at the bar, they're going like this, and you have to kind of wait until they're ready before you can ask them if they want something. So people then, they come in, they sit down, eyes on the bartender until he gets there. He's got a million things to do, and so, he says, hey, how you doing today? The guy says, oh, good, just spent the entire day trying to find an equestrian property for my daughter. She's into horses and trying to make that happen. And Murray just happens to know that the guy sitting 5 seats down sells real estate. Hey, Frank, you sell real estate out past Monroe or Maltby, right? Yeah, I do. He's like, you know anything about equestrian properties? He's like, sure. He's like, this guy's looking for something for his daughter. And they're like, oh, yeah, hey. Boom, they're talking. Murray's back into the well, cranks out 10 more drinks, and then does that to the next couple of people. All of a sudden, everybody at the bar knows each other. They're all connected.
He treated everybody the same, no matter if you were a friend or you just were a customer that had come in once. He had the uncanny ability to remember you, remember something about you, remember your drink order, which I really don't know how he did that, but he did it.
The thing about Murray that just blew me away is his memory. He could remember a name and what somebody drank he hadn't seen for 5 or 6 or 7 years. And people, I can't tell you how many times people would come in and Murray would greet them by their name, and before they sat down, there was what they had drank years before, and the people would look at it and look at me, it's a gift.
It was always such a treat to see someone come in and just be bewildered when he would remember their cocktail from 4 years ago and, why they were in town and their wife's name and their kid's name. He was a master. And yeah, it made him a better bartender, but it was really who he was as a person. He really cared about people.
I always did my best never have to never pass off tickets to Murray when we were working together, because he was doing his thing, and let the maestro do his thing. He's working the crowd. I'm over here, getting my ass kicked, but he had his little ways of showing you that he appreciated what you were doing.
My wife, Rosemary, and I had somehow managed to become regulars at the Zigzag Cafe without ever meeting Murray. We were going in on one of the nights when he never worked, and it's kind of crazy on the face of it, because this is when he was the draw, and everybody who worked there and all the other regulars said, how have you guys never met him? You have to fix this. And we made it a point to go in on a night when we knew Murray would be there. The crowds just kind of miraculously parted, and there were 2 seats at the bar, and he was just there in front of us, and he pushed the coasters towards us, and he gave us each a little nod. And before we could say anything, he said, we meet at last.
Murray had several superpowers, in my opinion, but anticipation of need was one of them. That was one of those things where he would have things for people, in front of people, before they knew they wanted it.
His hands were always moving constantly. And I wondered if he was even doing anything when he was moving his hands, because it seemed like they were always doing something. You'd have to sit there and watch him for a while to see what he was doing. And sometimes he would pick things up and he would put them down, and he'd pick them up and he'd pick them down. And that was part of his hand dance that he did. That was part of the whole Murr the Blur thing.
Working side by side with Murray behind the bar kind of ruins you for working with anybody else. I went to work somewhere else, and it was like playing hockey. It's like, God, back off, He was just a master.
Working with Murray, it was like you're in a dance, and it was orchestrated by somebody, except for I didn't have to know anything. It was just the way it was.
You don't really want to train a 23-year-old who says, teach me how to bartend. That's not an actual question. You can say, teach me the difference between a Speyside and an Isla Scotch, that's an easy answer, but teach me how to bartend is not. And you're like, oh, Jesus, I'm not here to like coddle you, but you could do that in bits and pieces with Murray. You could sit at his bar and he'd give you bits and pieces, all while, if you were observant, you got to watch this whole orchestration occur.
He was never expected to be there for prep, right? He just kind of blazed in at like 10 to 5, kind of got his stuff together. Zigzag under the bar had this little like ice cream freezer, and it's where we kept like, there were a couple of bottles of booze. There was like maybe some vodka and some aquavit, things that were like really good frozen, but it was really, really cold. And we had these great, they couldn't have been any less than 12-ounce mugs, coffee mugs, that fit perfectly in there. And so he'd come in, he'd check, he goes, good man, you already put the mugs down here. I could go early today. It was always like a highlight of my night when he would reach over, or he'd kind of lean over like, I'm ready if you are. I'm like, okay, time for a beer. Always the best.
Back in those days, the restaurant industry was even smaller, and we served until the very, very bitter end. We would get all the restaurant people would come after they would get off work because they could literally get a drink until 2. And then we would have to make them give up their drinks, which oftentimes was difficult, but Murray would literally give somebody a drink at 2 minutes to 2. So they all came.
One story sticks out, which didn't take place here in the bistro. Murray and I became good friends, and we both loved music, and we went to Twist to see Willie Nelson. We're driving around, and we stumble upon this bar somewhere outside of Twist, locals only kind of situation. We walked in, and it was like the record player screeched to a stop, and everyone looked at us, all of them kind of glaring at us. We walk in, we kind of sheepishly get a seat, and Murray pulls out his wad of bills, which he always had with like a office clip on, and he buys the room around. He buys another round. And by the end of the night, the entire bar is toasting Murray. Here's to Murray. He could make a friend of anyone, and everyone fell in love with him that evening. We got offers to stay in people's trailers. Things got a little weird. We did not accept any of the invitations to stay.
As a matter of fact, he probably was the finest person at resolving conflict I've ever seen. And there was more than once where we'd be at after hours having breakfast or something, and you know, some personalities would start bouncing together, and you know, feathers were getting ruffled, and testosterone was flowing, and adrenaline started chasing the testosterone, and the next thing I know, Murray's calming everybody down. Probably saved me a few teeth over the years, I'm sure.
During the pandemic, Murray had gotten into the habit of holding court at a park that was near his place, and I arranged to meet him there one day, and he said, I'll bring the glassware. And I thought he was kidding. I assumed that we were going to get coffees and sit and catch up, but no, that was not the case. Because I get there, and Murray has a little bag with him, and he opens it up, and he unwraps 2 tumblers that he's carefully put in tissue paper so that they won't get broken on the trip over. And then he takes out 2 bottles of water. And then he takes out a new Irish whiskey that he wants me to try. So we're sitting in this park, and I realize this is like being at the bar with him, at the Zigzag or El Bistro or Cannon, any of those places. He's kind of recreated this in the middle of the pandemic. And we're having this drink, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a police officer. This is the first and only time in the city of Seattle that I've seen an officer walking a beat. He might as well have been twirling a nightstick. And he sees us, and he starts coming towards us. And I just think, this is going to be the most expensive drink that I have ever had. And the officer comes over to us and says, gentlemen, and just keeps going. And I said to Murray, I know you have a lot of pull in this town, but how did you make that happen? It was just like this very casual shrug, like, I don't know, I just accept things. That was part of his genius, is that, you know, nothing ever seemed like it was forced. He would just allow things to happen.
Murray and I always stayed in touch, and even though we weren't working together, I would follow him around, and probably the place where I followed him the most was sitting right here at El Bistro, and you know, I gotta tell you, when I walked in here, and I hadn't been in here for years, it just a rush of memories came roaring over me, and you know, I kind of looked behind the bar, and I kind of expect to see Murray the Blur whizzing back and forth at 90 miles an hour making cocktails, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if his spirit is right behind me. Probably laughing his ass off at some of the crazy stuff, but you know, special guy, really special guy. Yeah, special.
He never asked for help. He never asked for anything really of his friends. He was always a giver. And I feel sadness because of that, because, you know, it would have been nice to know how things were in the end, but he kept people close that over the years. He was really good at maintaining that relationship with people that he had relationships with. So, and I just feel blessed to have been called his friend.
Yeah, he was a traditionalist, but you know, always a gentleman and great with customers, and I mean that's why we all remember and revere him so much, is because how he treated people. Yeah, he was a special one.
Cheers. To Murray.
To Murray.
To Murray.
To Murray.
Oh, cheers to Murray. To Murray.
Cheers to Murray. Ah.
Murray, a su salud. Prost.